The jangling sound of keys in the lock, the cold and flickering beams of lanterns illuminating endless rows of tombstones. That was the first evening of Jake Morgan at his new job at the cemetery. The old, abandoned graveyard, lost among thickets of dark trees, carried an atmosphere that sent shivers down the depths of his soul. Jake had just moved to a small town, and as soon as he found it, decided to find any job to get by until the next paycheck. Meeting with the cemetery director, he was amazed at how quickly he was offered the position of a caretaker. "A new employee is always needed here," explained the director, peering through dark glasses. The first night was filled with anxiety and unease. Jake was getting used to the sounds of the night, which seemed unfamiliar and mystical to him. He tried to convince himself that it was just a job, nothing supernatural, but something around him pressed upon him with its presence. With each passing day, Jake delved deeper into the world of the cemetery. He noticed strange shadows drifting between the graves and heard rustles in the darkness that he couldn't explain. Once he even saw a figure standing at the edge of his peripheral vision, but when he turned around, no one was there. At first, he thought it was his imagination playing a cruel trick on him, but as the days went by, he began to doubt his sanity. Things started to disappear and reappear in unexpected places, and his sleep became haunted by nightmares in which he saw the faces of the dead, which seemed familiar to him. One night, late at night, as Jake was patrolling the perimeter, he heard a quiet sobbing. He headed towards the source of the sound and found a little girl sitting by one of the graves. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she silently looked at him. "What are you doing here?" Jake asked, his voice trembling with fear. The girl silently pointed to the grave in front of him. It bore the name Elizabeth Morgan. Jake felt his heart stop beating. It was his family name, but he had never heard of anyone with that name in his family. He realized he needed to find out more. Night after night, Jake delved deeper into the secrets of the cemetery. He discovered old records of the cemetery's over a century-old history, a history forgotten and visible only in the dusty pages of books. One story intrigued him, in particular the story of a curse placed on the cemetery decades ago for sins committed against the local tribe. With each new discovery, Jake felt his sanity slipping on the edge of the abyss. His sleep turned into torturous visions. His thoughts were seized by what he had discovered. He began to hear voices in his head, whispering incomprehensible words in an unknown language. One midnight, as he walked past the old stone chapel, he saw light shining through the cracks in the door. He resolutely approached the door and opened it quietly. Inside, he found a group of people dressed in strange clothes, standing around an altar illuminated by candles. They were uttering incomprehensible words in an ancient language, and Jake realized it was a ritual. He held his breath, trying to remain unnoticed, but suddenly one of them turned around, and their eyes met. Jake rushed to the exit, but a figure appeared before him, slowing his movement. It was an old man in tattered clothes, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. "You shouldn't have come here," the old man whispered, his voice echoing from the past. "What are you doing here?" Jake asked, his voice weak with fear. "We are trying to appease the souls that curse this place," the old man replied. "But we cannot contend with the forces summoned by this curse." Jake felt fear engulfing him, and he knew he had to escape, but something made him stay. The old man took him by the hand and led him to an ancient altar, on which lay an old book. "In this book lies the secret that can free our place from the curse," the old man said, pointing to the mysterious symbols carved on the pages. Jake felt hope stirring in his hands. He realized it was his mission to unravel the mystery of this place and free it from the evil that dwelled here. But with each new step towards unraveling the mysteries, Jake felt something dark and ominous pulling him deeper into its embrace. His mind began to fracture under the pressure of inexplicable phenomena, and he feared he might lose himself in this struggle. So ended Jake Morgan's first day at work at the cemetery, but his journey had only just begun. In this mystical tale, threads of the past and present intertwined, eerie secrets and unspeakable horror. And only time would tell whether he could escape the clutches of evil or become its victim, buried in darkness and oblivion. In the depths of the night, When the cemetery's silence was disturbed only by the rustle of leaves and the shifting of shadows, Jake continued his explorations. His mind was entwined with threads of mysteries, and his heart beat in unison with tumultuous emotions: fear, curiosity, hope. He returned to the old book shown to him by the old man and began studying its pages. The symbols on its pages seemed familiar to him, as if he had seen them in a dream, but their meaning remained elusive. With each passing day, Jake delved deeper into the mystical mysteries of the cemetery. He studied the history of this place, unraveled the puzzles of old records, and spoke with local residents, trying to piece together the puzzle. But the deeper he dug, the more he realized that this was no ordinary cemetery. It was a place imbued with dark energy, holding him in its grip. The entities that dwelled here did not wish to leave their graves, and they fought against those who tried to expel them. One day, as Jake studied old records in the town library, he came across a mention of the key to solving the curse, forgotten in the depths of the cemetery. He realized that this could be his last chance to end this mystical battle and free this place from evil. The next night, under the cover of darkness, Jake set out in search of this key. His heart beat in unison with the sound of the night wind as he marched along the forgotten path leading into the depths of the cemetery. His hands trembled with excitement, but his determination was unwavering. As he penetrated deeper into the darkness, Jake felt the air filling with a dark energy, as if the cemetery itself resisted his presence. But he was not about to stop. His courage was his weapon in this struggle. Finally, he reached his destination, a small, abandoned chapel standing in the shadow of dark trees. Jake's heart beat so loudly that it seemed as if it wanted to burst out of his chest. He entered and began searching through the old shelves and altars, hoping to find the key to this puzzle. But his search was in vain. The key was much more elusive and complex than he had anticipated. And then, just as he was about to despair, his gaze fell on an old dusty book lying on one of the shelves. He picked it up, dusted off the cover, and opened the first page. On the pages of this book were depicted ancient symbols, the same as those he had seen before. Clutching the book in his hands, Jake realized this was the key to unraveling the curse of the cemetery. But at that very moment, the walls of the chapel began to tremble, as if something dark and sinister was approaching him. Jake felt his heart stop as he heard rustling behind him. He turned around and saw a figure, shrouded in black, standing in the doorway. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, and Jake realized that this was the creature that guarded the secrets of this place, the creature that did not want them to be revealed. But Jake was ready to confront this evil, ready to protect those buried in this cemetery. With a strength he didn't even know he had, he lifted the book and began reciting the incantations carved on its pages. The creature screamed in pain, its dark form beginning to dissolve into the air, as if evaporating under the pressure of light and truth. Jake felt the darkness receding and light returning to this place, freeing it from the ominous shadow that had held it captive for decades. But victory came at a price. Jake realized that he could no longer stay in this place. Too many fears and mysteries, too many dark emotions had left their mark on his soul. He had to leave, leaving this place in the past, where it belonged. With a heavy heart, filled with mixed emotions, Jake left the cemetery for the last time. He left a part of himself there, his fears, his doubts, but also something more: his strength, his determination, his hope. And although he would never forget his first day at work in the cemetery, he knew that it was only the beginning of his adventures, the beginning of a new chapter in his life, full of secrets and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Over time, Jake tried to forget the horrors of those nights at the cemetery, but the shadows of the past haunted him, giving him no rest. Dreams of the dead and curses invaded his consciousness, slowly corroding his mind. He became increasingly lost in his own thoughts, unable to distinguish reality from hallucinations. The shadow of the past became his constant companion, and the curse of the cemetery his obsessive idea. One day, sitting in his house, he heard a quiet cry. His heart stopped, and he realized it was the same girl from the cemetery. Her ghostly figure stood before him, pleading for help. Jake decided to return to the cemetery, convinced that only there could he unravel the mystery of her death and free her soul. But the deeper he delved into the darkness, the stronger his sanity abandoned him. Eventually, he found himself sitting by the girl's grave, his mind consumed by fear and madness. He began to speak to the ghost, hearing only whispers of the wind and the rustle of branches in response. Days turned into nights, and nights turned into agonizing nightmares from which he could not escape. In the end, he was consumed by the dark energy of the cemetery, becoming a part of it, forgotten and lost in the darkness. Thus ended the story of Jake Morgan, a man whose curiosity led him to the brink of madness, to the dark depths where the mind loses its grip and the soul plunges into eternal torment. His name became nothing but a dead record in the history of the cemetery, a warning that it is dangerous to play with the dark forces that lie beyond our understanding.